Have you ever witnessed discrimination and wished you had the courage to stand up against it? Join us on a captivating journey as we follow the story of Amelia Tan, a brave young girl who defied all odds to fight for justice and equality in her community. Discover how her unwavering determination and the support of her loving family transformed a town and inspired a nation. Don't miss out on this incredible tale of resilience and the power of one small voice to change the world. Subscribe to our channel now to be the first to know when this inspiring story unfolds, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support is crucial to our storytelling and the growth of our channel. Get ready to be moved by Amelia's journey. Amelia Tan woke up to the chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves as a gentle breeze wafted through the half-open windows of her new bedroom. It was a perfect morning, signaling a fresh start for the Tan family in the quaint suburban town of Oak Valley. Amelia's parents, Marcus and Sophie, had decided to move away from the bustling city to provide a better life for their 8-year-old daughter. Marcus, an accountant, had secured a job at a reputable firm in town, while Sophie, a freelance graphic designer, looked forward to working from the comfort of their new home. As Amelia hopped out of bed and made her way downstairs, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air. Sophie was already in the kitchen, preparing a hearty breakfast for the family. "Good morning, sunshine," Sophie greeted Amelia with a warm smile. "Are you excited about your first day at Oakwood Elementary?" Amelia nodded enthusiastically as she sat at the kitchen counter. "I can't wait to make new friends and explore the neighborhood." Marcus entered the kitchen adjusting his tie. "That's the spirit, pumpkin. I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time." He planted a kiss on Amelia's forehead before grabbing a mug of coffee. As the family enjoyed their breakfast, they discussed their plans for the day. Marcus would be heading to his new office, while Sophie would stay home to unpack and set up her workspace. Amelia, meanwhile, would be taking the school bus for the first time. "Remember, sweetie," Sophie said, her tone gentle but firm, "if anything makes you uncomfortable or if anyone treats you unkindly, you tell us or your teacher right away, okay?" So Amelia nodded solemnly, understanding the importance of her mother's words. The Tans, being one of the few Asian families in the predominantly white neighborhood, knew that they might face some challenges as they settled into their new life. As the yellow school bus pulled up in front of their house, Amelia's excitement was tinged with a touch of nervousness. She hugged her parents goodbye and made her way toward the bus, her backpack bouncing with each step. The bus driver, an elderly white woman named Karen, greeted Amelia with a curt nod. Amelia smiled politely in return, but she couldn't help noticing the hint of disapproval in Karen's eyes as she scanned Amelia's features. Amelia made her way down the aisle, searching for an empty seat. As she walked, she felt the curious gazes of the other children, most of whom were white. Some offered friendly smiles, while others whispered and giggled amongst themselves. Finally, Amelia found a seat next to a girl with fiery red hair and a smattering of freckles across her nose. The girl introduced herself as Emma and struck up a conversation with Amelia about their favorite books and games. As the bus wound its way through the tree-lined streets of Oak Valley, Amelia felt a growing sense of excitement. Despite the butterflies in her stomach, she was eager to embrace this new chapter in her life. Upon arriving at Oakwood Elementary, Amelia marveled at the sprawling red brick building with its large windows and well-manicured lawn. She followed Emma and the other children into the school, taking in the colorful bulletin boards and the laughter echoing through the halls. Amelia's teacher, Mrs. Thompson, greeted her warmly and introduced her to the class. As Amelia took her seat, she couldn't help but notice that she was the only Asian student in the room. While most of her classmates seemed friendly and welcoming, a few cast curious glances her way as if trying to figure out where she fit in. Throughout the day, Amelia immersed herself in her lessons, raising her hand to answer questions and participating enthusiastically in group activities. She found herself drawn to Emma's bubbly personality and quick wit, and the two girls quickly bonded over their shared love of art and storytelling. As the final bell rang and the students filed out of the classroom, Amelia couldn't wait to tell her parents about her first day. She boarded the bus with Emma, chatting animatedly about the projects they would be working on together. However, as Amelia made her way to her seat, she accidentally bumped into a boy, causing him to drop his backpack. Before she could apologize, the boy sneered at her, muttering something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like clumsy Asian. Amelia felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and confusion. She had never been singled out like that before, and the boy's words stung more than she cared to admit. As she sat down next to Emma, Amelia couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in her chest. She glanced up at Karen, the bus driver, hoping for some sign of reassurance or support. Instead, she was met with a cold, indifferent stare that seemed to suggest that Amelia was on her own. Amelia turned to look out the window, watching the houses and trees blur past as the bus made its way through the neighborhood. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but something about Karen's demeanor and the boy's comment made her feel like an outsider in her own community. As the bus pulled up to her stop, Amelia gathered her belongings and made her way down the aisle. She stepped off the bus and onto the sidewalk, her mind swirling with a mix of emotions. While she had enjoyed her first day at school and the budding friendship with Emma, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that her journey in Oak Valley would be far from easy. With a deep breath, Amelia walked up the path to her new home, ready to embrace the challenges and triumphs that lay ahead. Little did she know that the incident on the bus was just the beginning of a series of events that would test her family's strength, resolve, and unity in the face of adversity. As the weeks passed, Amelia settled into a routine at Oakwood Elementary. She excelled in her classes, particularly in English and art, and her friendship with Emma blossomed. The two girls became inseparable, spending their lunches and recesses together, giggling over inside jokes and planning playdates. However, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss with Karen, the bus driver. While Karen never openly mistreated Amelia, there was a palpable coldness in her interactions with the young girl. Amelia noticed how Karen would greet the other children with a warm smile and a friendly word, but when it came to her, Karen's demeanor was stiff and formal. One afternoon, as Amelia boarded the bus, she overheard Karen muttering something under her breath. "Why do they keep coming here? This neighborhood used to be so nice." Amelia felt a knot form in her stomach. She couldn't be certain, but she had a sinking suspicion that Karen was talking about her family. She tried to push the thought aside, not wanting to believe that an adult could harbor such prejudice. As the bus rumbled through the streets of Oak Valley, Amelia found herself lost in thought. She wondered if her parents had ever faced similar discrimination and how they had coped with it. She made a mental note to ask them about it later. When Amelia arrived home that day, she found her mother, Sophie, in the living room, hunched over her laptop. Sophie looked up and greeted her daughter with a warm smile. "Hey, sweetie, how was school today?" Amelia hesitated for a moment before deciding to confide in her mother. "It was good, but Mom, I think there's something weird going on with the bus driver." Sophie's brow furrowed with concern. "What do you mean, Amelia? Has she done something to make you uncomfortable?" Amelia recounted the incidents with Karen, from the cold stares to the overheard mutterings. Sophie listened intently, her expression growing more troubled with each word. "I'm so sorry you've had to deal with this, Amelia," Sophie said, pulling her daughter into her affirmation. "And I want you to know that none of this is your fault. Some people like Karen have prejudices that are deeply ingrained. It's not right, and it's not fair, but it's something that we as a family have to be prepared to face." Amelia nodded, feeling a mix of sadness and anger. "But why, Mom? Why do people treat us differently just because of how we look?" Sophie sighed, searching for the right words. "It's complicated, sweetie. Some people are afraid of what they don't understand. They've grown up with certain beliefs and stereotypes, and it can be hard for them to see past those. But that doesn't make it okay. We have to stand up for ourselves and for what's right, even when it's difficult." Amelia took her mother's words to heart, determined to be brave in the face of adversity. She knew that she had the love and support of her family, and that gave her the strength to keep going. As the days turned into weeks, Amelia continued to observe Karen's behavior. She noticed how the bus driver would sometimes forget to stop at Amelia's designated pickup spot, forcing her to walk a few extra blocks to the next one. She noticed how Karen would scrutinize Amelia's backpack and lunchbox, as if searching for something to criticize. Amelia's parents, growing increasingly concerned, decided to take action. They scheduled a meeting with the school principal, Mr. Johnson, to discuss their concerns about Karen's behavior. During the meeting, Mr. Johnson listened attentively as Marcus and Sophie described the incidents Amelia had experienced. They emphasized that they wanted to create a safe and inclusive environment for their daughter and that Karen's actions were unacceptable. And Mr. Johnson assured the Tans that he would investigate the matter thoroughly and take appropriate action. He promised to speak with Karen and to monitor the situation closely to ensure that Amelia and all students were treated with respect and fairness. Amelia felt a sense of relief knowing that her parents were advocating for her and that the school was taking her concerns seriously. However, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in her chest. And a few days later, as Amelia boarded the bus, she noticed a change in Karen's demeanor. The bus driver's face was tight with barely concealed anger, and her eyes flashed with resentment as she watched Amelia take her seat. As the bus pulled away from the curb, Karen suddenly slammed on the brakes, causing the children to lurch forward in their seats. Amelia, caught off guard, tumbled into the aisle, her books and papers scattering across the floor. "Oops," Karen said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I guess some people just don't know how to stay in their seats." Amelia felt hot tears stinging her eyes as she scrambled to gather her belongings. The other children watched in stunned silence, unsure of how to react. Emma, seeing her friend's distress, leaped from her seat to help Amelia. Together they collected the fallen items and made their way back to their seats, their hearts racing with a mix of fear and anger. So as the bus continued on its route, Amelia couldn't help but wonder if Karen's actions were a direct result of her parents' meeting with Mr. Johnson. Had they inadvertently made things worse by speaking up? Amelia's mind raced with questions and doubts as the bus pulled up to Oakwood Elementary. She disembarked, her legs shaking slightly, and made her way into the school building. Throughout the day, Amelia struggled to concentrate on her lessons. She kept replaying the incident on the bus in her mind, trying to make sense of Karen's cruelty. She wondered if she should tell her parents about what had happened, but a part of her feared that doing so would only escalate the situation further. As the final bell rang and Amelia made her way back to the bus, she steeled herself for whatever lay ahead. She knew that she couldn't let Karen's actions go unchallenged, but she also understood that she was just a child, facing off against an adult with deeply entrenched prejudices. Amelia took a deep breath as she climbed the steps of the bus, her heart pounding in her chest. She locked eyes with Karen, who met her gaze with a cold, unyielding stare. In that moment, Amelia realized that her battle with Karen was far from over. She knew that she would have to be strong, not just for herself, but for her family and for all those who had ever faced discrimination and injustice. And with a newfound sense of determination, Amelia took her seat, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For she knew that the road to equality and acceptance would be long and difficult. But she also knew that she had the love and support of her family to guide her every step of the way. As the bus pulled away from Oakwood Elementary, Amelia looked out the window, watching the world go by. She knew that her story was just beginning, and that the fight for justice and understanding was one that she would wage for years to come. As the weeks turned into months, Amelia's encounters with Karen, the bus driver, became increasingly fraught with tension and hostility. Despite her parents' efforts to address the situation with the school administration, it seemed that Karen's behavior only worsened, as if she was determined to make Amelia's life as miserable as possible. One particularly chilly morning, as Amelia waited at her designated bus stop, she couldn't help but notice that the bus was running late. It glanced at her watch, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air, and wondered if perhaps Karen had called in sick. Just as Amelia was about to give up and start walking to school, the familiar yellow bus rounded the corner. However, instead of slowing down to pick her up, the bus sped past, Karen's face barely visible behind the frosty windows. Amelia stood in shocked disbelief as the bus disappeared from view. She knew that Karen had seen her waiting there, and yet she had deliberately chosen to leave her behind. With a heavy heart and tears stinging her eyes, Amelia began the long trek to Oakwood Elementary. As she walked, her mind raced with questions and doubts. Why was Karen targeting her? What had she done to deserve such cruelty? By the time Amelia arrived at school, her cheeks were flushed from the cold and her legs ached from the unexpected exercise. She slipped into her classroom, trying to ignore the curious stares of her classmates. Mrs. Thompson, noticing Amelia's disheveled appearance, pulled her aside after class. "Amelia, is everything all right? You look upset." Amelia hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. She trusted Miss Thompson, but she also feared that speaking up would only make things worse. I missed the bus this morning," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Then Mrs. Thompson's brow furrowed with concern. "I see. Well, I'm glad you made it to school safely. If there's anything else you want to talk about, my door is always open." Amelia nodded, feeling a small measure of comfort in her teacher's kindness. She knew that she couldn't keep her struggles with Karen a secret forever, but she also knew that she needed to be careful about how and when she spoke up. As the day wore on, Amelia found herself lost in thought, her mind constantly drifting back to her encounters with Karen. She wondered if other students had experienced similar mistreatment, and if there was anything she could do to stop it. During lunch, Amelia confided in Emma about the morning's incident. Emma listened intently, her eyes widening with each detail. "Amelia, that's awful," Emma exclaimed. "You have to tell someone. Your parents, Mr. Johnson, anyone." Amelia sighed, picking at her sandwich. "I know, but what if it just makes things worse? What if Karen starts targeting other kids because of me?" Emma placed a comforting hand on Amelia's shoulder. "It's not your fault, Amelia. Karen's the one who's wrong, not you. And if she does start targeting other kids, then we'll all stand together. We won't let her get away with it." Amelia felt a surge of gratitude for her friend's support. She knew that Emma was right, but the thought of confronting Karen still filled her with dread. That evening, as Amelia's family gathered around the dinner table, she finally found the courage to speak up about her experiences with Karen. She recounted the incident from that morning, as well as the countless other times Karen had singled her out or treated her unfairly. Marcus and Sophie listened intently, their faces etched with concern and anger. They had suspected that something was amiss, but hearing the details from Amelia made the situation all too real. "Amelia, we're so sorry you've had to go through this," Marcus said, his voice heavy with emotion. "We had no idea things had gotten so bad." Sophie reached across the table and took Amelia's hand in hers. "We're going to fix this, sweetie. We won't let Karen or anyone else treat you like this." Amelia felt a weight lift from her shoulders, knowing that she had her parents' unwavering support. Together, they decided to schedule another meeting with Mr. Johnson, this time with Amelia present to share her experiences firsthand. The next day, as Amelia and her parents sat in Mr. Johnson's office, the young girl recounted the incidents with Karen, her voice trembling but determined. She spoke of the cold stares, the muttered insults, and the deliberate attempts to exclude and isolate her. Mr. Johnson listened intently, his expression growing more somber with each revelation. When Amelia finished, he leaned forward, his hands clasped on his desk. "Amelia, I want to thank you for your bravery in coming forward," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "That you've described is completely unacceptable, and I assure you that we will take immediate action to address it." He turned to Marcus and Sophie, his gaze steady. "I will personally speak with Karen and make it clear that her behavior will not be tolerated. So we will also be launching an investigation into her conduct and taking appropriate disciplinary measures." Marcus and Sophie nodded, their relief palpable. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson," Sophie said. "We appreciate your support and your commitment to ensuring a safe and inclusive environment for all students." As they left the office, Amelia felt a sense of hope and determination. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but she also knew that she had the strength and the support to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the days that followed, Amelia noticed a marked change in Karen's behavior. The bus driver no longer singled her out or made snide comments, but instead treated her with a cool, detached professionalism. So while Amelia was relieved to no longer be the target of Karen's overt hostility, she couldn't shake the feeling that something still wasn't right. She sensed a simmering resentment beneath Karen's polite facade, and she wondered if the bus driver's prejudices had truly been addressed or merely driven underground. As Amelia shared her concerns with Emma and a few other close friends, she was surprised to learn that she was not alone in her experiences. Other students, particularly those from minority backgrounds, had also faced discrimination and mistreatment from Karen and other school staff. Determined to bring about real change, Amelia and her friends decided to form a student-led diversity and inclusion committee. They met regularly to share their experiences, brainstorm solutions, and advocate for a more equitable and welcoming school environment. Word of the committee's work spread quickly, and soon more and more students began to come forward with their own stories of prejudice and injustice. What had begun as a small, grassroots effort quickly grew into a school-wide movement, with students' parents and even some teachers joining the call for change. Amelia found herself at the forefront of this movement, her quiet strength and unwavering commitment to justice inspiring those around her. She spoke at school board meetings, organized rallies and workshops, and worked tirelessly to educate her peers and the wider community about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Through it all, Amelia's family remained her rock, providing unwavering love, support, and encouragement. They stood beside her at every event, cheered her on from the sidelines, and reminded her every day of how proud they were of her courage and resilience. As the school year drew to a close, Amelia couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed since those first difficult days on the bus with Karen. She had grown from a shy, uncertain little girl into a confident, passionate advocate for change. She knew that the fight for justice and equality was far from over, but she also knew that she had the strength, the determination, and the support to keep pushing forward. And as she looked around at the diverse, vibrant community that had grown up around her, she knew that every struggle, every setback, and every triumph had been worth it. With a smile on her face and a fire in her heart, Amelia stepped off the bus on the last day of school, ready to embrace the challenges and opportunities in our head. She knew that, no matter what the future held, she would always stand up for what was right, and she would always fight for a world where every child could feel safe, valued, and loved. As the new school year began, Amelia returned to Oakwood Elementary with a newfound sense of purpose and determination. Over the summer, she had continued her work with the Student-Led Diversity and Inclusion Committee, organizing community events and workshops to promote understanding and empathy among her peers and neighbors. However, despite the progress they had made, Amelia knew that the fight against prejudice and discrimination was far from over. She had heard whispers of discontent among some of the more conservative members of the community, who felt that the committee's efforts were unnecessary and divisive. Home one crisp autumn morning, as Amelia boarded the school bus, she noticed a palpable tension in the air. Karen, the bus driver, greeted her with a curt nod, her eyes flickering with an emotion that Amelia couldn't quite place. As the bus wound its way through the quiet streets of Oak Valley, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that something is amiss. The other students seemed unusually subdued, their conversations hushed and furtive. Suddenly, the bus lurched to a stop, jolting Amelia from her thoughts. She looked up, expecting to see the familiar red brick facade of Oakwood Elementary, but instead found herself staring at an empty lot on the outskirts of town. "Everyone off the bus," Karen barked, her voice sharp and commanding. Amelia and the other students exchanged confused glances, but dutifully filed off the bus. As they gathered on the side of the road, Karen stepped down from the driver's seat and stood before them, her arms crossed and her face stern. "Listen up," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I've had enough of this diversity and inclusion nonsense. The kids need to learn that life isn't always fair, and that sometimes people like you just don't belong." Amelia felt her heart skip a beat, a wave of fear and anger washing over her. She glanced around at her classmates, seeing the same shock and disbelief mirrored in their faces. "You can't do this," Amelia said, her voice trembling but defiant. "This is wrong and we won't stand for it." Karen's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a sneer. "And what are you going to do about it, little girl? You think anyone cares about your little committee? You think you can change the way things have always been?" Amelia stood tall, her chin lifted and her eyes blazing with determination. "Yes, I do. And I'm not alone. We have the power to make a difference, and we won't be silenced by people like you." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd of students, their fear giving way to a sense of solidarity and strength. They stood together, united in their resolve to fight back against the injustice and bigotry that had plagued their community for too long. Karen's face twisted with rage, her fists clenched at her sides. "Fine," she spat. "Have it your way. But don't come crying to me when you realize that the world doesn't care about your little crusade." At that, she stormed back onto the bus, slamming the door behind her. The engine roared to life, and the bus sped away, leaving Amelia and her classmates stranded on the side of the road. For a moment, they stood in stunned silence, the weight of what had just happened sinking in. Then, as if moved by a common purpose, they began to walk, their feet carrying them towards town and the school that awaited them. As they walked, they talked, their voices growing louder and more confident with each step. They shared their own stories of discrimination and prejudice, their fears and hopes for a better future. And as they spoke, they began to realize the true power of their collective voice. By the time they reached Oakwood Elementary, word of their impromptu march had spread like wildfire. Teachers, parents, and community members gathered outside the school, their faces etched with concern and support. Mr. Johnson, the principal, stepped forward, his expression grave but determined. "Amelia, students, I want you to know that we stand with you. What happened this morning was unacceptable, and we will not tolerate this kind of behavior from anyone, staff or student." Amelia felt a surge of gratitude and relief, knowing that she and her classmates were not alone in their fight. She stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. But this isn't just about us. This is about creating a community where everyone feels safe, valued, and respected, regardless of their background or identity. So we need to work together to make that happen, and it starts with holding people accountable for their actions." A chorus of cheers and applause erupted from the crowd, the energy palpable and electric. In that moment, Amelia knew that they had reached a turning point, a watershed moment in the history of their town and their school. Over the next few weeks, the story of Amelia and her classmates' brave stand against discrimination made headlines across the country. Journalists and activists flocked to Oak Valley, eager to learn more about the young activists who had dared to challenge the status quo. Amelia found herself at the center of a media firestorm, her face splashed across the front pages of newspapers and her words echoing in the halls of power. She spoke at rallies and conferences, her message of unity and empowerment resonating with people from all walks of life. Meanwhile, the school board launched a full investigation into Karen's actions, as well as the broader culture of discrimination and bias within the school system. They implemented mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all staff and worked to create a more equitable and inclusive curriculum. Amelia's parents, Marcus and Sophie, watched with pride as their daughter emerged as a true leader and changemaker. They stood beside her every step of the way, providing love, support, and encouragement as she navigated the challenges and triumphs of her newfound role. As the school year drew to a close, Amelia looked back on the incredible journey she had undertaken. She had started the year as a shy, uncertain little girl, struggling to find her place in a world that often seemed hostile and unfair. But through her own courage and determination and the support of her family, friends, and community, she had become a force for change, a beacon of hope in a time of darkness. And as she looked ahead to the future, Amelia knew that her work was far from over. There would always be those who sought to divide and oppress, to marginalize and discriminate. But she also knew that she had the power within herself to stand up, speak out, and make a difference. With a fierce determination burning in her heart, Amelia stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She knew that no matter what the future held, she would always fight for what was right, and she would always stand tall in the face of adversity. She was Amelia Tan, the girl who had dared to dream of a better world and who had inspired a generation to believe in the power of their own voices. And she knew that together they could build a future where every child could thrive and where justice and equality reigned supreme. As the dust settled in the wake of Amelia's brave stand and the subsequent investigation into Oak Valley school system, a new sense of purpose and unity began to emerge within the community. The once quiet suburb found itself at the center of a national conversation about race diversity and inclusion, and many residents were forced to confront long-held biases and prejudices that had gone unchallenged for far too long. For Amelia and her family, the journey was far from over. While they had won a significant victory in their fight against discrimination, they knew that true change would require ongoing effort and commitment from everyone in the community. In the weeks and months that followed, Amelia continued to work tirelessly with her student-led diversity and inclusion committee, organizing events and workshops aimed at fostering greater understanding and empathy among her peers. As she spoke at school board meetings and town halls, her voice growing stronger and more confident with each passing day. At the same time, Marcus and Sophie found themselves taking on new roles within the community, using their own experiences and expertise to help drive positive change. Marcus began working with local businesses to promote diversity and inclusion in the workplace, while Sophie volunteered her time and skills to help develop a more culturally responsive curriculum for the school district. Despite the progress being made, there were still those who resisted the call for change. Some parents and community members continued to voice their opposition to the diversity and inclusion initiatives, arguing that they were unnecessary and divisive. Others, like Karen, the former bus driver, remained unrepentant in their prejudice and hatred. One evening, as the Tans sat around the dinner table discussing the challenges that lay ahead, Amelia spoke up, her voice filled with a quiet determination. "I know it's not easy," she said, looking around at her parents with a wise beyond her years expression. "But we can't give up. We have to keep fighting for what's right, even when it feels like the whole world is against us." Marcus and Sophie exchanged a proud glance, marveling at the strength and resilience of their young daughter. They knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but they also knew that they had the love and support of one another to guide them through. As the conversation turned to happier topics, the doorbell suddenly rang, startling them from their reverie. Marcus rose to answer it, wondering who could be visiting at such a late hour. To his surprise, he found Mr. Johnson, the school principal, standing on their front porch, a look of barely contained excitement on his face. "Marcus, Sophie, Amelia," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "I have some incredible news. The school board just voted unanimously to implement a comprehensive diversity and inclusion program across the entire district. And they want Amelia to be the student representative on the planning committee. Amelia's eyes widened, her heart racing with a mixture of shock and elation. She knew that this was a momentous opportunity, a chance to help shape the future of education in Oak Valley and beyond. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "I accept," she said, her eyes shining with determination. "Let's get to work." Over the next year, Amelia threw herself into her new role with the same passion and commitment she had brought to every challenge she had faced. She worked long hours with the planning committee, helping to develop a comprehensive curriculum that celebrated diversity, promoted equity, and fostered a sense of belonging for all students. She spoke at conferences and workshops across the country, sharing her story and inspiring others to take up the fight for justice and equality in their own communities. And through it all, she remained true to herself and her values, never wavering in her belief that every child deserved to feel safe, valued, and loved. As the school year drew to a close, Amelia found herself reflecting on the incredible journey she had undertaken. She thought back to those first difficult days on the bus with Karen and how far she had come since then. She thought about the friendships she had forged, the allies she had found, and the countless lives she had touched through her advocacy and leadership. And she knew with a sense of unshakable conviction that she had found her true calling in life. On the last day of school, as Amelia walked through the halls of Oakwood Elementary one final time, she was struck by the sea of smiling faces that greeted her at every turn. Students of all colors and creeds from all walks of life waved and cheered as she passed by, their eyes filled with admiration and respect. And as she stepped out into the bright June sunlight, her parents by her side and her future stretched out before her like a canvas waiting to be painted, Amelia knew that she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. For she was Amelia Tan, the girl who had dared to dream of a better world and who had inspired a generation to believe in the power of their own voices. She knew that, no matter what the future held, she would always stand tall in the face of adversity, always fight for what was right, and always lead with love and compassion. So a Tan family walked hand in hand towards the next chapter of their lives. They knew that they had been forever changed by the experiences of the past year. They had learned the true meaning of courage and resilience, of community and solidarity, and of the incredible power of one small voice to change the world. And as they looked to the future, they knew that they would face it together, united by the unbreakable bonds of love and family, and guided by the unwavering belief that a better tomorrow was always within reach, as long as they had the courage to fight for it.